Imagine waking up on a bright morning, stepping outside and looking up to a sky that has withheld a single drop of rain for weeks. The air feels different, drier and almost crackling, with the absence of moisture, as if the world is holding its breath in anticipation of relief that never comes. You notice the subtle changes around you. The once vibrant greens of your neighborhood plants now appear dull and sickly, with the familiar lushness replaced by a thirstier, paler hue. It feels like an unusual drought, but what if this lack of rain stretched on for an entire month? This scenario isn't just a random dry spell, it's the beginning of a significant shift that could ripple across the globe, altering ecosystems, impacting human lives, and even affecting the very air we breathe. In the first few days of this rainless month, the immediate impact may go unnoticed by those of us living in urban environments, distracted by our daily routines. However, for farmers and agricultural workers, the shift is palpable. Crops that rely on consistent rainfall quickly begin to show signs of distress. Fields of wheat, corn, and soybeans, staples essential for global food supplies, struggle to thrive. Without moisture, plants start using up any remaining water in the soil, their roots desperately searching for sustenance. Farmers, acutely aware of the impending crisis, scramble to provide water for their crops. But limited irrigation resources mean tough choices about which fields to prioritize. Meanwhile, livestock begins to feel the strain as pastures dry up and water sources become increasingly scarce, leading to concerns over animal health and food production. As the situation worsens, a chain reaction unfolds in the agricultural sector. The reduced crop yields led to food shortages, which will ripple through supply chains and affect grocery stores and food prices worldwide. Rural and urban communities alike begin to feel the strain as families struggle with rising costs and dwindling supplies. It's not just the crops that are impacted, the livelihoods of farmers and agricultural workers are at stake, creating a sense of urgency and despair. As the days stretch on without rain, what began as a concern for farmers gradually begins to seep into urban life. By the second week, water scarcity transforms from a looming threat into a pressing reality. Households start noticing a significant reduction in water pressure, and local governments are compelled to issue restrictions on water use. Residents are met with signs at their neighborhood parks, urging them to conserve water while the once vibrant green lawns begin to turn brown. In some areas, strict rationing measures are implemented, limiting everyday activities like lawn watering, car washing, and even shower lengths. This sudden scarcity forces communities to reevaluate their water consumption habits, prioritizing essential needs over leisure. Cities that rely heavily on reservoirs and natural lakes for drinking water see these water levels dipping alarmingly fast. Conversations about conservation and rationing shift from mere discussions to urgent necessities. Local authorities scramble to find alternative sources or implement emergency measures, such as transporting water from distant regions. With dwindling supplies, the demand for bottled water surges, resulting in increased prices and accessibility issues for vulnerable populations. The strain on water supply infrastructure becomes evident as aging pipes and systems are pushed beyond their limits, further complicating the situation. The public health implications of this water crisis soon become apparent. As hygiene becomes increasingly challenging, hospitals, schools, and businesses must adapt to the growing need for conservation while still meeting basic requirements. People are advised to limit water usage, leading to heightened stress around sanitation and hygiene practices. In areas lacking advanced desalination plants or reliable infrastructure for water distribution, the hardships are even more pronounced, creating an alarming disparity in how different communities are affected. Vulnerable populations, such as the elderly, the poor, and those with limited access to resources, feel the impact deeply, raising concerns about public health and safety. As the weeks without rain continue, the ecological impact intensifies and begins to ripple through both rural and urban landscapes. Forests and grasslands, once teeming with life, now dry out under the relentless sun. This transformation leaves these natural environments vulnerable to wildfires, creating a looming threat. Drier, more flammable landscapes could ignite with the slightest spark, and urban centers near these areas are put on high alert, acutely aware that a single careless act could lead to devastating fires that consume homes and habitats alike. The wildlife that relies on these ecosystems faces increasing challenges as natural habitats begin to change dramatically. Animals are forced to search for new sources of water and food, leading to unusual migrations and behaviors. Species that once thrived in these areas now find themselves pushed to the brink, competing for dwindling resources. Birds that typically flock to freshwater lakes for sustenance may be forced to alter their migratory paths, while larger mammals struggle to find adequate food supplies in parched landscapes. This shifting ecological balance doesn't only threaten individual species, it jeopardizes entire ecosystems. The interconnected web of life that supports various flora and fauna begins to unravel, with cascading effects felt throughout the food chain. As the drought persists, pollinators like bees may find it difficult to locate food, resulting in decreased crop yields and further exacerbating the agricultural crisis. The absence of rain in this context signifies more than just a lack of water. It is a potential tipping point for ecosystems worldwide. By the end of the month without rain, the repercussions of this seemingly simple weather phenomenon become painfully clear. Even if rain were to return, the damage done during these weeks would resonate for years to come. Ecosystems may struggle to recover as habitats are lost, species decline, and the delicate balance that sustains life becomes increasingly fragile. The long-term implications of such a drought could result in decades of effort to restore the health and biodiversity of these environments. The agricultural sector, too, faces a long road to recovery. Farmers will need to adapt to a new reality, possibly shifting their practices and crop selections to better withstand future droughts. Conversations about sustainable practices, such as water-efficient farming techniques and crop diversity, will take center stage as communities work together to ensure food security in the face of climate variability. This scenario serves as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our weather patterns and ecosystems. It highlights the fragility of the delicate balance that sustains our planet and the potential consequences of our actions or inactions. As we reflect on the impact of a month without rain, we are reminded of the importance of protecting our environment, investing in sustainable practices, and being proactive in our efforts to conserve water and restore natural habitats. Thanks for watching, and be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to learn more about the impact of climate change on our planet, check out our video on the effects of rising temperatures on global food production. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Imagine waking up to a world where the morning sun isn't alone, and instead of a gentle sunrise, two blazing spheres dominate the sky, casting their intense, unrelenting light across the horizon. It's a mind-bending thought, and while it sounds like something from a science fiction novel, imagining the science behind such a scenario shows just how different life would be in a two-sun system. From global climate to how we measure time, our world would be altered in astonishing and sometimes alarming ways. If Earth orbited two suns, the combined solar energy would amplify beyond anything we know. Just one sun supports life here, delicately balancing temperatures to support ecosystems, oceans, and everything we see around us. Adding a second sun to the mix would mean twice the solar energy, setting off a chain reaction across the planet. Earth's surface would likely become significantly hotter, especially in areas closer to the equator. Over time, temperatures would rise globally, creating an environment where the extremes would intensify and familiar ecosystems would face overwhelming pressure to adapt. Under two suns, the polar regions, already sensitive to climate change, would undergo rapid and perhaps irreversible transformations. These regions, home to vast ice caps and unique ecosystems, would begin to experience a level of warming that could melt ice at unprecedented rates. This process wouldn't just be a slow thaw, it would lead to a rapid disappearance of polar ice, contributing to massive rises in sea levels worldwide. Coastal cities that currently enjoy bustling economies, bustling ports, and millions of residents would be at high risk. As the ice melts, communities around the world would start to feel the impact in ways that would be impossible to ignore. With the increased solar radiation, our planet would be in a continuous state of flux, facing ever-shifting weather patterns that we could barely predict. The traditional boundaries between seasons might blur, and extreme weather events, from intense storms to unrelenting heat waves, would become the new norm. The atmospheric systems we rely on for rain, snow, and stable seasons would no longer function the way we're used to. Instead, unpredictable, severe weather could strike at any time, with storms more intense and widespread than anything previously recorded. In this unusual world of two suns, life would adapt, but not without struggle. The plants, animals, and other organisms making up our ecosystems might not survive the drastic increase in solar energy and heat, which would push many to the brink. Species in every habitat, from tropical rainforests to arid deserts, would face survival challenges on a scale unlike anything seen before. With two suns in the sky, the continuous blast of solar energy would drive dramatic shifts in climate. Earth's jet streams, responsible for the planet's major weather systems, would go haywire under this excess energy, leading to more erratic and powerful storms. These chaotic jet streams would likely make extreme events such as hurricanes, tornadoes, and heat waves both more frequent and more intense. Areas that once enjoyed predictable seasons could find themselves experiencing summer-like heat nearly year-round, while once temperate regions might swing wildly between scorching heat and brief cooling spells. This surge in extreme weather wouldn't only reshape landscapes, it would also have profound consequences for biodiversity. As the climate transforms, plants and animals that have evolved over thousands of years to live in specific conditions would struggle to survive. Biodiversity would likely plummet as species face conditions that outpace their ability to adapt. Deserts might expand, engulfing nearby regions as plants wither under the blazing light of twin suns. Water sources in these areas would also quickly evaporate, leaving little for native life to rely on. Meanwhile, rainforests, which thrive in stable, humid conditions, might dry out in this altered climate, leading to die-offs on a massive scale. This decline in plant life would reverberate up the food chain. Herbivores reliant on specific vegetation would be at risk, and in turn, their predators would face dwindling food sources. Marine life would also suffer, as warming oceans lead to coral bleaching and the collapse of marine ecosystems. While some highly adaptive species might survive, entire ecosystems could be restructured, leaving the environment unrecognizable. This chain reaction would create a world in which only the most adaptable and resilient species might find a way to endure, amidst an environment reshaped by two relentless suns. In a two-sun scenario, our familiar day-night cycle would be lost. The perpetual daylight, or at most a dim twilight, would transform our sense of time and disrupt natural sleep-wake rhythms, known as circadian rhythms, that have guided life for millennia. Human bodies, accustomed to the rhythmic cues of sunrise and sunset, would struggle to adapt. Constant exposure to light would likely lead to widespread insomnia, mental fatigue, and physical health issues, as people attempt to sleep in what would feel like an endless day. A new society-wide approach to sleep would become essential, potentially involving designated blackout shelters or artificial light control zones to simulate night. Beyond sleep, people's routines, work schedules, and even cultural practices would have to change. In a world of continuous light, the concept of a 24-hour day would no longer apply. Instead, society might transition to a new kind of cycle, one based on artificial darkness for specific hours, creating personalized nights. This change in timekeeping could lead to a completely restructured lifestyle, where daytime activities stretch out indefinitely, blurring the lines between work, rest, and leisure. This constant daylight would also impact agriculture and food supply. Plants, like people, rely on darkness to regulate growth cycles. With uninterrupted light, many crops could become overstressed, facing challenges in flowering and fruiting stages. Farmers might have to invent new techniques, perhaps growing crops under controlled, shaded environments to replicate nighttime. Traditional farming practices would become less effective, leading to potential food shortages and shifting dietary habits, with reliance on lab-grown foods or other alternatives. The cumulative effect of these changes on human society would be profound. Sleep-deprived, facing disrupted schedules, and reeling from food insecurity, humanity would find itself in an era of unprecedented adaptation. As we wrap up our journey into a two-sun scenario, it's crucial to consider the larger cosmic impact. With two suns in our solar system, Earth's position within the habitable zone, the sweet spot for life, would be highly unstable. Even slight shifts in this zone could cause regions of the planet to experience extreme conditions. With both suns exerting gravitational pulls, Earth's orbit could become erratic, causing significant seasonal changes or even threatening our long-term stability within the solar system. Moreover, the additional sun would increase the frequency and intensity of solar storms and coronal mass ejections, supercharging space weather events. These intense bursts of radiation would disrupt Earth's magnetic field, posing serious risks to global satellite and communication systems, GPS, and even power grids. Imagine widespread, prolonged power outages on top of the environmental and social challenges from constant sunlight. Humanity would be forced to develop new technologies to shield our infrastructure from the sun's intense activity, which could require a massive, costly overhaul of power and communication networks. Night skies as we know them would disappear. With 2 suns, the perpetual twilight would render stargazing obsolete, with only the brightest stars occasionally visible. This lack of natural darkness would impact everything from scientific observations to cultural and spiritual practices centered around the night sky. Observatories would likely be forced to move to far-off regions, where controlled darkness could be artificially created. For astronomers, this constant glow would be a significant loss, as Earth's 2-sun system would make tracking distant galaxies, star formations, and potential extraterrestrial signals nearly impossible. In a final twist, our beloved moon would also be heavily impacted. A second sun would alter the gravitational dynamics that govern its orbit and phases. This change could destabilize the moon's position, affecting tides and the subtle gravitational balance that has shaped Earth's rhythms for billions of years. Rising and unpredictable tides would endanger coastal communities further, adding another layer of threat to Earth's ecosystems and infrastructures, already under strain from flooding and extreme weather. In this new era of relentless heat, chaotic orbits, and a transformed night sky, life on Earth would never be the same. The planet would be forced to adapt to this cosmic upheaval, a world where humanity's resilience and ingenuity would be tested at every turn. Imagine waking up to a world without oceans. The familiar, comforting roar of the waves is gone, replaced by an overwhelming silence that feels almost unnatural. The salty breeze that once swept through coastal towns is now absent, leaving the air stark and dry. Picture standing where the water once was, a vast empty landscape stretching out before you, revealing what was hidden beneath miles of deep, mysterious blue. Seafloor trenches, ancient corals, and submerged ridges now lie, exposed to the open air, a haunting reminder of what once thrived below. The absence of these oceans is more than just a strange sight. It's the beginning of a series of catastrophic events that would reshape the world in unimaginable ways. At first, it may seem almost surreal, a bizarre alternate reality. But then the reality of it all begins to settle in. Without the ocean's vast expanse, Earth has lost one of its most vital sources of stability. The sudden disappearance of all this water would disrupt life on a scale we can barely comprehend. The air would feel different, and within days, people around the world would begin to notice the changes in ways both subtle and severe. One of the most immediate and drastic effects would be on Earth's moisture levels. Oceans are responsible for a significant part of the water cycle. They evaporate, form clouds, and send rain to nurture plants, trees, and crops around the world. With the ocean water gone, this cycle collapses almost overnight. Plants deprived of rain would start to wither, leading to massive droughts everywhere. Imagine fields of wheat and corn drying out in record time, forests becoming brittle and vulnerable, and rivers and lakes drying up as they lose their primary source of replenishment. This abrupt drought would cripple agriculture, pushing humanity toward a food crisis as crops fail and livestock starves. The once abundant green spaces around the globe would start to disappear, leaving dry, cracked ground in their place. And it's not just the plants and animals on land that would suffer. Marine ecosystems would be completely destroyed. Every vibrant coral reef, colorful fish, and mysterious deep-sea creature would be wiped out. Without the stability and life-supporting nature of the oceans, marine life as we know it would vanish. The barren seafloor, now exposed to sunlight and open air, would become a desolate, lifeless terrain. Species that humans have relied on for food and industry would be lost. And the seafood industry, a critical source of sustenance and income for millions of people worldwide, would collapse overnight. But the lack of moisture is only one part of this unfolding disaster. Oceans play a key role in regulating the global climate, absorbing heat and distributing it across the planet. Their absence would send shockwaves through the atmosphere, leading to dramatic and unpredictable weather patterns. Regions that were once temperate might suddenly become unbearably hot or shockingly cold. Storms could become a rare but violent phenomenon, with intense droughts, sudden freezes, and dust storms sweeping across formerly lush landscapes. Extreme weather events that humanity has never experienced could become common, wreaking havoc on cities, towns, and natural landscapes alike. The disappearance of the ocean water would also set off a chain reaction with far-reaching consequences for the Earth's atmosphere. Methane, long trapped on the seafloor, would be released in enormous quantities. This potent greenhouse gas would rapidly contribute to warming the atmosphere, amplifying the extreme weather patterns already unfolding. The world would be caught in a loop of climate chaos, with rising temperatures, erratic storms, and catastrophic conditions becoming the new global norm. This hypothetical world without oceans is as terrifying as it is fascinating, a planet that barely resembles the one we know today. Each new consequence would impact life in ways we might never anticipate, leading to a series of challenges that humanity would be hard-pressed to overcome. And this is only the beginning. As the days and weeks roll by in this strange new world, the true depth of the ocean's disappearance reveals itself across continents. The drought has set in firmly, but this lack of moisture is just the tip of the iceberg. With the water cycle broken and no rains to feed rivers and reservoirs, freshwater supplies start to dwindle fast. City reservoirs drop to record lows, and once great rivers shrink to dry beds of cracked mud. Nations that were lush and green become arid, while deserts stretch further each day, encroaching on cities and farmland. People scramble to find water, digging wells deeper than ever before, but it's a losing battle. Every drop becomes precious, rationed, and protected as communities struggle to adapt. This crisis extends beyond just water. Without the ocean, the air itself begins to change in ways scientists had not predicted. Oceans naturally absorb vast amounts of carbon dioxide, acting as a buffer for the planet's atmosphere. With this buffer gone, the levels of carbon dioxide in the air begin to skyrocket, leading to what scientists term a carbon shock. The atmosphere feels heavier and more polluted, especially in urban areas where population density is high. Breathing itself becomes more difficult, and people report a constant feeling of fatigue, struggling to adapt to the shifting environment. Meanwhile, the loss of ocean-based oxygen production begins to impact air quality significantly. Algae and other marine plants are responsible for producing around half of Earth's oxygen. With these sources of oxygen gone, the balance of gases in the atmosphere tilts, leading to a slow but steady decrease in the available oxygen. This might not cause immediate respiratory issues for the general population, but high-altitude areas would feel the effects sooner. For those living in mountainous regions, oxygen levels would begin to drop to hazardous levels, forcing people to migrate to lower elevations. The disruption of global weather systems only adds to the chaos. Ocean currents, which once balanced temperatures between the equator and the poles, no longer function. The poles begin to cool rapidly as there's nothing to moderate the temperatures anymore. Glaciers and ice sheets, which once melted and refroze with the ocean currents, begin to expand, consuming the coastlines and regions around them. In contrast, equatorial regions become almost unbearably hot, facing relentless heat waves that push temperatures to record highs. People flee these regions en masse, migrating to cooler areas and creating a global population shift unlike any in history. As weather patterns grow unpredictable, agriculture becomes increasingly difficult. Crops that could once rely on steady seasonal rains now face erratic, often extreme conditions. Desperate for solutions, scientists and engineers work to create new systems of irrigation and water sourcing, but the scale of need is immense. Food becomes scarcer, and rationing becomes commonplace as economies adjust to the new reality. Without the stable temperatures that oceans once provided, traditional farming practices begin to fail, forcing humanity to rethink food production entirely. Vertical farming and greenhouse agriculture surge in popularity, but these solutions only cover a fraction of the world's needs. Food prices skyrocket, and access to resources becomes a central global concern. In this world of water scarcity, climate extremes, and shifting resources, society itself begins to change. People band together, creating communities around remaining freshwater sources, and cities abandoned by those fleeing harsh conditions quickly transform into ghost towns. Society organizes itself around new essentials: water access, temperature control, and food production. The vanishing of the oceans has reshaped the world entirely, forcing humanity to face the challenge of survival in a transformed and unforgiving landscape. With the ocean floor exposed and left dry, the Earth's crust undergoes a series of massive and immediate shifts. Oceans once provided weight and pressure on tectonic plates, creating stability across vast regions. Without this pressure, tectonic plates begin to shift unpredictably, giving rise to violent earthquakes in areas that were once calm. Major fault lines destabilize, triggering seismic activity that ripples through continents. Cities located near tectonic boundaries, like California's San Andreas Fault or the Pacific Ring of Fire, become unstable, experiencing earthquakes more frequent and severe than ever before. Some of these tremors even create gaping fissures, with huge sections of land beginning to sink or crack. The volcanic landscape of the Earth also transforms in dramatic fashion. Pressure changes lead to the awakening of dormant volcanoes, and new eruptions spew ash and magma across the continents. Volcanoes that have slept for centuries now explode, blanketing the atmosphere with ash that filters sunlight and makes breathing even harder. This layer of volcanic ash lingers, turning the skies an eerie gray and leading to what scientists call a volcanic winter. Without oceans to moderate temperatures, Earth cools dramatically as sunlight struggles to break through the thick haze. Regions that were once warm and lush turn bleak and frozen, and agricultural areas face extreme challenges as sunlight and warmth become scarce resources. Meanwhile, ecosystems on land are rapidly unraveling. Animals that once depended on coastal waters for food, such as seabirds, bears, and numerous other species, find themselves with no food sources. Inland species, too, feel the effects, as ecosystems everywhere collapse without the ocean's contribution to the water cycle. Trees and plants that relied on humidity and consistent rainfall start to wilt and die. Forests, which used to be lush and green, turn dry and barren, leaving once thriving ecosystems in shambles. Without ocean-fed rivers to sustain them, even freshwater lakes and streams begin to dry up, leading to the extinction of many freshwater species. The release of methane from the ocean floor compounds these issues further. Methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, was once trapped under layers of ice and sediment in the deep sea. Now exposed to the air, it seeps into the atmosphere in massive quantities, fueling rapid climate change and accelerating Earth's transition to a chaotic, unstable climate. The sudden increase in greenhouse gases makes the remaining weather patterns even more extreme, with intense heat waves followed by frigid volcanic-induced winters, making survival a challenge for all life on Earth. At the same time, newly exposed land areas that were once oceanic depths are now vast barren deserts. These stretches of desolate landscape are devoid of soil or nutrients, making them inhospitable to most forms of life. Harsh winds blow across these dry plains, creating massive dust storms that can travel for hundreds of miles, further polluting the air and making it difficult for any remaining vegetation to survive. These dust storms, fueled by the lack of moisture and the planet's increasing temperature fluctuations, contribute to the already dwindling air quality, filling cities with fine particles and creating health hazards for humans and animals alike. As the harsh landscape reshapes itself, even the smallest creatures suffer. The collapse of ecosystems forces insects and small animals to migrate in search of resources, which disrupts food chains that were once stable. Invasive species, driven by desperation, spread into regions they once avoided, crowding out native plants and animals. Pests, now unregulated by their natural predators, grow in numbers and damage crops and any remaining vegetation. Without the natural buffers provided by the ocean, nature's checks and balances dissolve, leaving a fragile, barely functioning web of life that struggles against the ever-increasing odds. In this turbulent new world, humans are forced to adapt in ways that once seemed unthinkable, facing the unprecedented challenge of surviving on a land that has lost its oceans, stability, and balance. As humanity grapples with the staggering consequences of a world devoid of oceans, survival becomes an everyday battle. Societies that once thrived along coastlines now face the grim reality of desolation and scarcity. Major cities, which were once bustling centers of trade and culture, transform into stark reminders of a lost era. The thriving economies built on fishing, tourism, and maritime trade collapse as resources dwindle and shipping routes become non-existent. The vibrant coastal communities that depended on the ocean's bounty suffer immensely, forced to confront an uncertain future. With the ocean gone, access to clean drinking water becomes one of humanity's greatest challenges. Freshwater sources rapidly deplete as lakes and rivers dry up, leading to severe water shortages. The struggle for this vital resource leads to desperation and conflict among communities. People are forced to adapt by devising new ways to collect and store water, but even rainwater becomes increasingly rare due to the disrupted climate. With no ocean to fuel the water cycle, regions experience severe droughts that last for months or even years, making it nearly impossible to grow crops or sustain livestock. Agriculture faces a monumental crisis. Farmers once relied on rich, moist soil, nourished by ocean breezes and rain brought by the water cycle. Now, with soil depleted and conditions dry, crops fail. Food scarcity turns into famine, pushing communities to the brink. The global food supply chain breaks down as imports and exports collapse, leading to widespread malnutrition and starvation. Governments scramble to find solutions, but their efforts are hampered by the rapidly changing landscape and political unrest driven by competition for dwindling resources. To cope with this unprecedented situation, people are forced to innovate. They turn to technology in an attempt to create artificial sources of water. Desalination plants are built in the hopes of extracting moisture from the now dead ocean beds, but the energy demands of such technology are staggering, requiring resources that are increasingly hard to come by. Communities band together to implement drastic water conservation measures, sharing knowledge on sustainable practices and rainwater harvesting techniques. Even the most remote locations attempt to harness every drop that falls, but the continuing extreme weather events create challenges that threaten these efforts. In the midst of this chaos, humanity faces a psychological toll. The loss of the ocean, a source of beauty and inspiration, sends shockwaves through cultures and societies worldwide. Artists, writers, and musicians grapple with expressing the grief of a world that has changed so drastically. Mental health issues rise as people experience anxiety, depression, and despair, struggling to reconcile their memories of vibrant ocean life with the stark realities of their current situation. The connections to nature, once taken for granted, become a poignant reminder of what has been lost. Social structures begin to shift as communities adapt to their new environment. People are forced to leave their homes in search of areas with better resources, leading to mass migrations. Some once thriving urban centers become ghost towns, while others experience an influx of those seeking refuge. This creates tension as competition for remaining resources intensifies, leading to conflicts and the breakdown of social order in some regions. Communities that come together out of necessity often find strength in unity, fostering new relationships that transcend previous divisions. In this harsh new reality, humanity's resilience is put to the test. Many individuals step forward as leaders and visionaries, rallying communities to forge new paths for survival. Cooperative farming initiatives emerge, encouraging collective efforts to restore some semblance of agricultural stability. Grassroots movements spring up, focused on environmental restoration and finding innovative ways to thrive without the ocean's resources. As people unite in their shared struggles, they rediscover the importance of community, cooperation, and sustainable living. Ultimately, the world without oceans becomes a stark reflection of humanity's impact on the planet. The disappearance of the oceans serves as a sobering reminder of the delicate balance that sustains life. As societies confront the reality of their new environment, they also recognize the urgent need to change their relationship with nature. Lessons learned in this harsh new reality prompt a global awakening, fostering a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of life on Earth. As we consider the possibility of living in a world without oceans, it sparks crucial conversations about our responsibilities toward the environment. The ocean, once taken for granted, becomes a symbol of resilience and hope, a call to action to protect and restore the delicate ecosystems that sustain life. The journey forward is uncertain, but humanity's capacity for adaptation, creativity, and collaboration holds the potential to shape a future that honors the lessons of the past while striving for a more sustainable world. So what do you think? How would you cope in a world without oceans? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's explore together the importance of preserving our planet's precious ecosystems before it's too late.